I would also like to acknowledge the Yalukit Willam clan of the Bunwarang language group, the traditional and continuing custodians of the unceded land and waters on which the EcoCentre work and many of us live. Because we work around the bay, we also want to acknowledge all of the language groups of the Kulin Nation and any elders past, present, and emerging. The work we do at the EcoCentre strives to uphold that tradition of caring for country, protecting the land, Bunjil, and the children of Bunjil. So usually if I give a talk like this, you might actually be in our EcoCentre in the corner of the St. Kilda Botanic Gardens. Once upon a time, the park superintendent's cottage in the 1960s, this was where he and his family lived, and then became a community meeting space, council meeting space that often had Earth Care St. Kilda and other environmental groups meeting there. And in around 1998, 1999, some people, including some people I know who are on this call, between council and community got together and said, why sit around waiting for solutions when we could spark them ourselves? And decided to convert the center into the Port Phillip EcoCentre, a community-led environmental hub. This view is from the community garden, and you can see the compost bays to the right as well, community compost bays. Perhaps some of you dropped your compost to our center in the St. Kilda Botanic Gardens, or have walked past and wondered, am I allowed there or not? Because it looks like and was a domestic cottage, even though now we conduct all manner of science, education, and action projects from this hub. So I wanted to start with the question, what color is the sky? I think instinctively or immediately most of us would answer blue, although we know that the sky has unsuspected depth, and depending on how you're looking at it, when you're looking at it, and where you're looking at it, there's an array of colors in the sky. So I'm going to give you some slices of the EcoCentre today, and some of those slices might intersect with your organizations and interests, but I also want to say that there will be unsuspected depth, and I will package just little bits of it here. If there's more that you are particularly curious about and you haven't heard about it today, I welcome your conversations, your questions in the question and answer afterwards, or you can look on ecocentre.com. Where possible in this presentation, I'll try to give you the URLs to go to or where you can find more information. So the EcoCentre is all about activating community so that we together can be cultivating long-term environmental well-being. And in our current strategic plan, we're striving to achieve 4 outcomes: that people are more connected with, value, and interact with their local ecosystems; that we activate people, individuals and groups take action that protects and restores their environment; that through this we're able to transform and influence positive systemic environmental changes. And underpinning all of that, and has been a through line in all of our strategic plans historically, that we enable this by having an effective and efficient and innovative organization. These kids are part of our Alive Outside program. They were snorkeling in Port Phillip Bay off of Point Ormond. I don't know if you've gone in the water. There's really lovely. There's a rocky reef just off of our local shores. You can put your head in the water and be looking at rays and fish, and put your head out of the water and be looking at the city skyline. It's quite extraordinary. And this is one of our programs that we've recently adapted to be a digital experience, and you can get a somewhat experience of snorkeling if you'd like to use your imagination and talk to our scientists and educators when we have our snorkeling from your lounge session at the end of July, where everyone in the public is welcome to join us. Many of you will be familiar with the fact that we're located in the city of Port Phillip. It's our founding partner, our longest term major partner and sponsor of our work. And in every ward of Port Phillip, we undertake a range of activities at schools, of festivals, events, faith-based organizations, wildlife, landscapes, community groups, volunteers, businesses, and we get out there. You might have seen us in your neighborhood, but we reach well beyond that. This is a map from last year's annual report. Each of those teeny dots, and I couldn't even fit the whole thing on the screen, represent a place where we're undertaking an education action project. And that's possible because we partner. We partner with those red outlines, or municipalities that we partner with, local government areas. We also have 31 affiliate community organizations. Some of them are in this call, I can see. in the attendance. And we have 143 schools and early learning centers that we work with. So we're out talking to a lot of people directly, and then building capacity for them to work within their local patch. The EcoCentre's job is to stitch that into a bigger picture for impact, both geographically and in terms of thinking about community and institutional links. So how does the day-to-day look if you want to change the legislation and the whole system around it? We're able to get a lot done through all of those connections. Last year, that was over 20,000 volunteer hours. And to give you an idea of how rapidly community concern about the environment and interest in rolling up sleeves and getting our hands dirty and feet wet, just getting out and getting tangible differences made, that was doubled from our 2017 volunteer participation numbers. So people we're part of a movement. Everyone on this call is part of a massive movement to be making these changes that are critical at a very rapid scale and pace for this decade. We want to make sure that our participants are actually learning something as a result. And so we found 89% of our participants have increased knowledge and awareness as a result of their experience. This actually surprised us. We thought that because, like you all, come with your own level of expertise and connection to your local landscape, that we might find only about half of our members might be learning new things, but actually we're able to deepen and expand the experiences for most of our participants, and then do what's the most important thing, inspire action as a result of it. So we have 73% of our participants making behavior changes. You might not recognize the hand in this. It is mine though, in this photo in the background, but you'll probably recognize the plant, this beautiful wattle tree in the back section of the St. Kilda Botanic Gardens. That part you probably know, and you might even know that the wattle gum has cultural traditional uses, but probably, I think everyone on this call, even though we're on Zoom in the modern age, is probably old enough to have sent a real letter and licked a postage stamp. So you have also tasted wattle gum, which I found interesting, as I love both the wattle plant and I love sending letters. So this is just a few of the partners that we work with. We have over 250 partnerships to get everything done in what you're about to see in the case studies from recent years. These are a few that you might be able to pick out, and they range from friends groups who have really in-depth knowledge of a local place and exposure to a site again and again to understand what's really happening on the ground, up through state and national and international connections to make sure that we're also taking a perspective on what is happening in a global context and what is the best practice that we could be implementing at all different sorts of scales and aspects of society. One of our benefits of partnerships is that it gives us reach. It activates new audiences as part of the champions for sustainability, environment, and climate action. This on the left is Sam, and Sam Perkins, what came to us when he was wanted to complete particular scout recognition, and he asked Neil if he could come and do a session with the scouts at the Brighton Sea Scouts at Holloway Bend, looking at some citizen science on the beach. So Neil, maybe you might recognize with the long white beard, that's Neil Blake OAM. He was the founder of the Port Phillip EcoCentre. It came over from Port Phillip Council into the first directorship of the EcoCentre for 15 years. And now he is the Port Phillip Baykeeper. This is an honorary title, part of 350 waterkeepers worldwide who are the voice for their local waterway, being an independent voice, looking at science and creating community connection so that community feel connected to that waterway, but also that government, business, research institutions can all work together to protect and restore that waterway. So it was a perfect project when the Sea Scouts approached Neil. He went and showed some citizen science to Sam on the beach, who they looked at microplastics. So plastics smaller than 5 millimeters. The surveys were shocking in their results. Sam got more scouts on board. The scouts talked to their parents and to their scout leaders. Scout leaders talked to other scout leaders. And so within a few years, this went from an individual scout approaching the EcoCentre to Scouts Victoria creating the Street to Bay badge for environmental leadership. And so far to date, over 800 scouts from 24 locations, and I really mean from both peninsulas up into the Dandenongs, it's about as far reaching around Melbourne as you could imagine, have participated in surveys to measure, monitor the placement, distribution, and size and type of plastics and microplastics litter on their streets, long before it gets into the waterways where it is hard to remove and before it reaches Port Phillip Bay. They do this by having environmental nights. So Neil or the EcoCentre goes out, trains the scouts up in citizen science methods, and then the scouts continue to do seasonal surveys, which currently is going through a data visualization process, and hopefully in the coming months we'll be able to share with you some really interesting interactive maps of where hotspots are throughout the catchment. But it's not just face-to-face that we get people involved. That's the way we love, but a really important part of what we do is our outreach through resources. So we do media. You can see on the left some traditional media, radio, television. We also do print media, articles and interviews, a few that we were in last year, Australian Geographic, BBC, also Diversity, RIP, Diversity, The Age. And we produce videos, tools, case studies, and reports that are easy and really pitched at people who don't have a lot of time, don't have a big budget, but have the passion and want to, or maybe technical expertise or people power, and want to affect change. Two of the ones here are our citizen science evaluation rubric, so helping other groups create citizen science, and also proactive knowledge management on an NFP budget. I couldn't even say it out because it sounds really jargony, but what that means is we've got intergenerational changes in all of our organizations. How do we make sure that the wisdom, technical knowledge, and credibility is passed between generations? And we've given a few tips that are appropriate if you have $0 in your budget or if you have a budget like the EcoCentre. Our budget, by the way, a mix of fee for service, about 30% fee for service, and the rest is split between government support, in particular City of Port Phillip, as well as grants from the Victorian and federal government, and philanthropy, with a small amount of fundraising. You may have received an email from me about that if you're an email subscriber to the EcoCentre. It's not just about where we're reaching, it's about whom we're reaching, and we want to be inclusive, equitable, and make sure that our programs reflect the makeup of the populations of Melbourne. Sustainability doesn't, and climate change, not only does it reach everyone, it also disproportionately tends to impact disadvantaged communities, people of color, and people of lower socioeconomic disadvantage. So we work to make sure that we're partnering for participation and feedback and continuously improving our programs for diversity, equity, inclusion, and environmental justice, which is a very American phrase. You've maybe noticed my accent comes from the US originally. So connect, act, transform. This is our journey of change, our theory of change that we have. We need to connect people to each other and place, activate new behaviors, and then we'll get the momentum and numbers to be able to transform everything from daily behaviors, business best practice, curriculum in schools, legislation, to just being the new normal, which is a phrase that we may all be a bit over during a pandemic year, but remains extremely important. And all of this is underpinned by enabling activities by our organization and our committee of management. So what does some of this look like? Well, in connecting people to place and to each other, we bring out corporate volunteers. These ones are doing a Pamper the Penguins Day at the St. Kilda Penguin Colony. Really fantastic colony, looked after purely by volunteers for 32 years now as researchers and volunteer penguin guides. Earth Care St. Kilda, my hat is off to you. I volunteered for them when I first came to Australia as well. These volunteers were putting in new plants for the penguins and removing plastics. So when those 1,300 penguins are coming in to nest, they are nesting in the correct materials. If you go out and look at that salt bush, they're all kind of bald from the ground up to penguin beak height. So we're putting more plants out there for them. We work with a lot of schools. So we do excursions, incursions, Tomorrow's Leaders for Sustainability, which is a 10-week in-school program where we work looking at sustainability through a local lens, and then the students and children lead the design and lead their own projects to do a practical action relating to water, waste, energy, biodiversity, or Indigenous culture. This photo is from St. Columba's Elwood. They are a 5-star sustainable school, and the work that we've done with them has enabled them to cut their waste by 50%, cut their power and emissions by 50%, and to put most of their pipes connected to rain tanks rather than using drinking water for flushing toilets, washing art room brushes, etc. And you also see someone here as part of our Alive Outside snorkeling session at Point Ormond last year. It makes me a little bit cold to think of it right now, but it was definitely taken during warmer times when that was a comfortable activity. If you've ever walked past the EcoCentre property, you'll have walked through one of our community gardens, the one on site at the EcoCentre. It's the home of the Port Phillip Urban Fresh Food Network, a social inclusion gardening program that attracts people from retired professionals to new arrivals to Melbourne, unemployed, underemployed, people who are recovering from health issues and re-emerging to begin to participate in social and work towards professional activities, and we're able to support them with professional development, letters of reference, etc. We put on 48 community meals there a year, a little less this year. We also do 40 tons of community compost management. So if you drop your community compost or perhaps miss it at the moment to the EcoCentre, that's all the people power of mussels turning that compost. That was actually my first job at the EcoCentre in 2009. So I'm extra grateful to our volunteers who manage the community compost space, diverting over 40 tons of food waste from landfill each year. And excitingly, this is now going to become a legal requirement of councils to provide curbside green waste collection within this decade. So we'll always have community compost, but we're really excited that there's a systemic change to put this into something that isn't relying on volunteer power. We've also installed community gardens at social housing around Port Phillip and helped with the initial stages of the creation of local community gardens like Veg Out back in the day, as well as Mary and Basil at the Mary Kehoe Center. People have social outcomes as well as their environmental learning outcomes. And sometimes we even get surprise guests, like this beardy fellow in the lower corner. It was pretty fantastic when we had both Neil and Costa on site at the same time. He joined our garden volunteers for lunch, as he's friends with a few of us at the EcoCentre. Another thing about connecting is looking at whom are we connecting? Who should we be connecting to? So this project, Global Melbourne, took two aspects about Melbourne that we think are not properly addressed by current environmental sustainability and climate programs. The first is that in a city with a population of 5 million, on most years, we have 2.5 million visitors to the city. So that's half our population over again. When we think about people's impact on the environment, that's a lot of people that we have an opportunity to connect to place and activate as protectors of the environment, rather than the image that many of you will remember backpackers have, particularly at St. Kilda Beach. So we've partnered with different hostels, and I really want to acknowledge the work that they've done. They've had an awful year, and some of them are no longer operating as a result of the bushfires and COVID. But during this program, we developed programs with hostels and hospitality and tourism in order to get backpackers and visitors to Melbourne out learning about and volunteering on country. In terms of our own population of 5 million, 40% of us were born overseas, and that's 240 languages spoken across Melbourne. So although the EcoCentre has some languages and representation amongst our staff and key volunteers, we're looking to and committed to expanding that. Through our Global Melbourne Multicultural Bay Ambassadors Program, we're able to provide internships to emerging professionals from culturally and linguistically diverse communities. So we help them build up their professional skills so that they have a place in voluntary and professional roles in our field, and eventually that our environmental field reflects and includes equitably the entire makeup of population of Melbourne. They also are able to develop their own programs with us, and they run programs focused on engaging particular called communities. And 7 of our 8 ambassadors are pictured here. Ranjith, he is not in the photo. It's been fantastic. And we've also been able to put many of our clips and digital assets into different languages, add subtitles, and to create our own new video about the collection of multicultural connections at and through EcoCentre programs, which 2 weeks ago was in a Global Film Award finalist for the Sylvia Earle Film Awards. Very exciting. Sometimes connection is actually about connecting thoughts or connecting the dots mentally. And it might be about the integration of the different aspects of sustainability and environment. So I'm having tea here. It's not black tea, but embodied water. We actually eat water. A lot of people don't think about this. We think about what comes out of our taps. That's obviously important. We've all probably targeted 155, but that's a very small sliver, only about 5% of our water footprint in Melbourne. Most of it is actually what we eat and what we wear, or the products that we use. It's embodied in the materials that it took to produce or grow what we're eating or consuming. So you can see that waste is very integrated with water. I would ask if anyone have a think if you have a guess of how many liters of water it takes to make a cotton t-shirt or a pair of leather shoes. You can add it in the chat if you like. What your guess is? How many liters to make one t-shirt? How many liters to make one pair of leather shoes? If you have with your numbers, put which item you think it might match to as well. Oh yeah. Okay, interestingly, some of the numbers are right, but missing a 0. So it takes 2,000 liters to make a single t-shirt. It takes 8,000 liters to produce a single pair of leather shoes. So the activities that the EcoCentre does around consumption, repair, refusing things, circular economy, a lot of this ties into the interconnectedness of sustainability and environment issues. And I think you'll see in a later slide about our repair cafe that helps share this message as well. Really shocking, 95% of your water is what you're eating, drinking, and using, embodied. So how can we make sure that we're only using drinking water for drinking? This was the project Living Water Work Bees. It looked at different catchments, the Elster Creek catchment, so everywhere that drains into Elster Creek, and then Elwood Canal, and Werribee River catchment. And by volunteering for catchment care activities with our 11 partner groups, sorry I couldn't put all of them on, but maybe some of you are here today, by doing catchment care activities such as pollutant removal, weed removal, planting, or citizen science, then that earned rebate credits for infrastructure to go in for water recycling at schools, homes, or businesses who registered within that same catchment. So we're doing an immediate, on-the-day benefit to the catchment. We're also able to have 10,000 conversations with people who never thought about the catchment or the waterway, because in most of our suburbs, it's all hidden below paving at this time, but still flowing under in pipes out towards our waterways and bays. At this school, St. Joseph's Elstonwick, they installed enough rain tanks to reduce their water by 80%, their potable water use. And they've actually made, this is right at the beginning, so it doesn't look lush yet, but they've made a playground, a sort of interactive pump. Kids can sit on the bike and pump this water through this rain garden as well. This was a concrete courtyard previously. So really exciting to see the transformation of a school through the engagement of that entire school population of teachers and students in understanding of what a catchment is and how your decision on one piece of private land can impact so many others downstream. So of course, those catchments eventually all end in the bay. We have 3,000 drain outfalls that go from streets of Melbourne out onto the beaches and into Port Phillip Bay. When there's a storm, we expect water to be flowing out of them and carrying along any pollutants or litter or organic matter from the city. We don't expect anything to be coming out of those stormwater outfalls when it's dry weather. So this is a project that was undertaken by the EcoCentre with EPA Victoria and Monash University. We were the citizen science consultants. We worked with schools and scouts and created monitoring devices that were coded with Arduino if you're a coder. And so these monitors were able to be put into select stormwater drain outfalls around the bay and look for pH and salinity as indicators if there's water or liquid coming out at a time you wouldn't expect because it's dry weather. And this was supplemented by people walking by doing photographs and manual testing. The implication being if there's water coming out, it could be someone's water is leaking, so we're just draining potable water out to the bay. It could be an illegal connection, a sewage overflow, any number of things that we probably don't want going to the bay for one reason or another. So although it was really incredible to do the citizen science and have these young people involved in a real life project that was able to deliver information at a pace and a time scale and geospatial scale that EPA couldn't do themselves, they couldn't afford themselves. What was really fantastic was that the councils involved and the government agency were able to develop a response plan so that if these sorts of events are detected, there's actually a shared process for going and investigating them and understanding if they need to go upstream, back up the pipe, and figure out who might be illegally washing things down the drain, having an illegal connection, or a sewage spill or something that might need to be repaired. So often on citizen science, there's different things. You're getting line of evidence by the explicit participation by the public, but also we're trying to look at creating new bridges between agencies and between community and institutions. This is the Repair Cafe every second Sunday at the EcoCentre in normal times. The Jewish Ecological Coalition are co-sponsors of this, and it's powered by a number of community volunteers. You can come along and for free learn DIY repair skills, so you're upskilling instead of landfilling your items at home that might be broken. And we do a whole range from electrical appliances to kids' toys, lawn mowers, a lot of blenders, sewing and textiles. And this is a fantastic team of volunteers. They'll even be offering an online version of this, no electricals, this July. So if you'd like to hop on or register the EcoCentre's website to be part of that digital repair cafe, if you have anything at home that you'd like to learn to mend, this might be your month. Citizen science is done in partnership with a range of partners. We're doing sunscreen research with RMIT University's Nanotechnology Lab. And this is the first time that this has been researched in temperate waters and not been created in a lab. We're actually able to deploy volunteers to go and take coordinated water samples at points 6 times a day throughout the summer. And we're about to take the last third year of winter control samples in the coming weeks. And this then goes to RMIT University to be analyzed. So we're looking to see if the nanochemicals and metals in sunscreen wash-off is having any negative impact on Port Phillip Bay, with the end hope that we can have a sunscreen that's healthy for humans and the environment that that sunscreen is used in. But we're probably more famous for our microplastics research. This is Fam Clarko, our marine biologist in the center, setting up our manta net. This is a trawl net that we drop in behind the Yarra Riverkeeper boat in the Yarra and Maribyrnong rivers. We've been doing this for 5 years every month, collecting water samples at the top, and then it comes back to the EcoCentre where volunteers look at the dried out samples, catalog what is organic, what is plastic or microplastics. So they're looking at things that are less than 5 millimeters and measuring and categorizing those items to be able to help us give the first quantification, which is pretty horrific, of 1.1 billion pollutants going into the bay via those river surfaces alone. And for us to understand that that was almost entirely made up of microplastics. Some of those are the shreds off of other consumer items. So what happens now is those samples have gone to our other partnership at RMIT with the plastics lab, and they will be analyzed for the polymer type. So we have an idea of what family are those pollutants originally coming from, what family of plastic product, and also if there's how much chemical and toxic load there is, because plastics are a sponge for nasties once they're in the waterways. When they're in the waterways, they get in the food chain and into us. So this is a way of us being able to assess the health risk to humans, to soils and crops, and to our species in the waterways through science. And a lot of, you'll see those young people, they're wearing glass, most of them are wearing glasses. And people come along because they're grad students coming for an educational experience, or maybe a personal experience. Really I can't thank enough our volunteers. The EcoCentre is powered by, we actually have about 15,000 staff hours and over 21,000 volunteer hours per year. It's incredible. You might have been part of this stunt that Geo Fitzpatrick and I did a few years ago, comparing the 302 species that you can see at Melbourne Zoo to the Elster Creek corridor. In 24 hours, we were able to record 386 species that we spotted from 7 a.m. till 1 a.m. There's really quite an extraordinary array of life in urban areas. And Australia is mega biodiverse, but we also have the highest extinction rate anywhere. So this is something that we believe is really key to our message and engagement before we begin talking about our transform messages with people. We introduce people to the emblem animals who are actually our neighbors. This one is not so emblematic. Maybe as a kid you threw one of these at your sibling. That's not a jellyfish. That is it's a jelly matrix that contains the eggs of moon snail. You might have also seen evidence of these moon snails, conical moon snails, with a hole, perfect hole in a bivalve that's been a moon snail's toothy tongue has drilled in and slurped out a seafood dinner. These are all part of the intertidal zone, a part of our bay ecosystem that is understudied. The last time that mollusks have been looked at systematically in the bay was 1974. But they're a big part of the filtration system that keep our bay swimmable. And obviously the bay is important to the cooling of our city in a time of climate change. And there are a few feedback loops related to mollusks as water heats or acidifies, and mollusks' inability to grow. So we're looking at coastal squeeze and this intertidal zone. Another transformational thing, we put on a partner to put on a teacher conference for 200 teachers across Victoria. This one was from the zoo, this flyer's from the zoo last year. Peer teaching for best practices, introducing sustainability and climate education at your school's curriculum, operations, and community engagement. An important part of what we do is talk to our elected representatives. And if any are here today, we obviously welcome you and would love to have more conversations in the future. It's an important year to have these kinds of conversations. Sometimes we put in, actually regularly, we put in submissions. We sit on advisory panels and put in submissions on strategies and plans and legislation. In 2018, we were able to get plastics and microplastics legally defined as water pollutants for the first time. This quote is from a paper tabled in Parliament. And we work on local transformation as well. Projects you might be familiar with that we've done some background research on, such as the Elstonwick Park North Nature Reserve fauna report that underpinned the beautiful master plan for that local patch. I'd like to acknowledge that a lot of the work we do is not I mean, I've said it's important that we have volunteers, and that's true, but there's a particular group of volunteers that it's not possible for us to operate without. These are most of the members of our committee of management. It doesn't have Harpreet on it yet. My picture of a fig is this is a fig, a bat lolly, and it has there's fig wasps that depend on these figs, and the figs depend on the fig wasps. It's called obligate mutualism. So they can't survive without each other. And I think that's a story of the EcoCentre and our partnerships as well. So every time that we review our best practice or do professional development, we open that up to our partner organizations, and we would extend that to you as well as if you become our partner organizations. Now it's a climate emergency. There's rising community momentum. We've outgrown our space. You may have heard the campaigns for our redevelopment. Our council has detailed designs for a purpose-built eco-center that will triple our capacity for community engagement, as well as display a range of technologies, set benchmarks at a worldwide standard, provide indoor-outdoor classrooms, and Australia's first, I think, community-led citizen science lab. And now we know the future will include digital engagement as well, because the EcoCentre, like all of you, has been adapting over the last few months to be able to offer seminars, live streams, videos, digital resources to all of the different cohorts that we engage, from schools to government agencies, the general public, and our 30 affiliate community organizations who all have a related mission to the environment. We welcome you to deepen your role in our network of expertise and action. A few key URLs might be ecocentre.com/membership. This is for individual membership, which is free. Add your voice to our numbers, that's fantastic. ecocentre.com/donate. And follow us on our social media because that's a place where, particularly during the pandemic, we're able to provide a lot of our scientific and educational content at the moment. Before I hand over to questions, I just want to ask again, in the terms of the sky is blue. Some of you may have heard me tell this story before. The sky is blue now, but the word blue didn't exist until fairly recently. In every language around the world, it was the last color word to be named. And if you read things like classic Greek texts, you'll see the wine-colored sea or the green sky. And to me, the most fascinating aspect of this is trying to wrap my head around the fact that our brains would not have perceived blue until there was a word for it. There was a whole reality that was not able to be perceived until it was articulated. So I think we're at a time like that again. What is possible beyond our current reality? What do we need to name? What can we do together? We know that we want to have workshops to help people with taking climate action at a personal, household, and community level. We know that we need to continue advocating and submitting science-based, solution-oriented submissions to the decision makers and influencing our neighbors, friends, and elected representatives to make sure that we have a healthy, ecologically balanced, inclusive, and just future. I'm really interested in your questions and what we might be able to do together. Thanks.